So one of the time stretch possibilities in Cubase I already explained. If you wanna hear or know about that, you can just check out the video that I made about Vari audio, because here as well it is possible to time stretch notes. You can just grab it in the end and lengthen the note to your liking. A third function you can use for time stretching is probably not a time stretching tool on its own, but it works as this as well. And it is the tempo track. If you activated your musical mode, that is what I told before, you can do it here, you can do it in the sample editor with the quarter note, but you can also do it, I think, in the pool. You also have a possibility to activate the musical mode for your clips here. So if you did that, then watch this. If I activate my tempo track and you see this, almost nothing happens. So my track is 88 beats per minute. And if I activate my tempo track and change the tempo, that should change anything, but it doesn't. Why is that? That is because I activated the musical mode for all my events. And Cubase makes now sure that everything stays the same. So it stays in place, and even though I change my tempo, the track still will work. So the tempo is now different, but all the events are where they were before, and time stretching was automatically applied. So the events didn't move, and if they got longer or shorter, it was only so that they would fit to the new tempo. So check out this. I dropped my tempo drastically, almost 20 beats. So that is not a tool you would use if you say, well, I need that event stretched. Of course not. But the tempo track, which obviously changes the tempo, also works as some kind of a time stretching device if you have your music mode for your audio material activated, because right now if you activate it and you make changes to your tempo, the events don't change their outlook, but the tempo changes, and therefore automatic time stretching is applied, or otherwise your track wouldn't work anymore. Of course, if you see, if I change the tempo and the MIDI tracks follow but the audio not, that would just sound horrible. But actually it works really good. So I think this is really impressive, even though I did apply a lot of changes. So right now I'm at 80 beats per minute, and up here I'm at 150 beats per minute. It still did work, and all the tempo changes and the time stretching didn't sound that bad. So I was really impressed how good that worked. Although I have to say again, it's not a time stretching tool on its own, but it works kind of as a automatic time stretching for your events that are in musical mode. There's two more possibilities of time stretching. One I want to explain in another video a little bit more in detail because it's such a good tool and a little bit more complicated, or let's say at least it has way more functions and we would use it a lot for improving the timing of audio material that we recorded. So I want to explain that a little bit more in detail, but in short, it looks like this. So the audio warping tool shows you again here in the sample editor, you can see your event, and if you click somewhere, a warp marker appears. So you put in a warp marker somewhere and you drag it. That means your audio material gets time stretched according to the movement that you apply with the warp marker. You also have the warping function here in your project window. It's kind of a warping that is attached to your project. So if you go here and you put in a tempo event, then again you can use this to time stretch all the events that you have in your project. And you can see on the bottom in my tempo track that the tempo changes was automatically applied and the bars stayed the same. So what was on beat 1 stayed on beat 1, and what was on beat 3 or 2 or 4 or something stayed there as well. So my bar structure did not change in relation to my audio events. Just the events were stretched or compressed and the tempo changed accordingly. That is a good tool, especially for film music composers. They would use that all the time to make their music fit the scenes and the scene changes. The last tool for time stretching that I want to show real fast is, I think, probably a very good tool, but I have to admit I wouldn't use it a lot because it is really a special tool for doing complex time stretching processes, and that I have never needed up to now. I want to show it real quick if somebody needs it, because you have to apply a trick that you can find it in the first place. At least in this version of Cubase, I have no idea how it is with older ones or the Cubase 12. So it is a time stretching process and you find it in processes. That is, you right click it with Command or Control and you find it here. You also find it here in your audio menu processes, and you find it here in your tab processes, and you find it here F7 in your direct offline window. What I mean is this. If I want to activate the time stretch process for this event, you see Cubase claims that I just applied time stretching to this clip, but the window is completely empty. And that happened to me some time ago, and I thought it was not very obvious and not easy to find out why it is empty. So that is the reason I want to tell it to you real quick. If you have automatic time stretching activated, then you can't use the process time stretch. I'm not 100% sure why. These two probably don't like each other a lot. So if you want to find the time stretch process, which is a special tool for time stretching, you gotta deactivate the music mode. And then, ta-da! Time stretching appears. I think it does look a little confusing. That is because it is mostly not as pretty as, let's say, other tools in Cubase. So if you want to use a compressor and it is like colored and there are buttons and lights and you can turn the button until you hear something, and if you don't know what all the numbers mean, it's not that important, because if your ear says, well, I think it sounds cool, then it doesn't matter what the numbers say. But for the time stretching process, it's a little different, because there's no colors and no buttons which you can like just start to turn and then you will see what happens, because it is a very complex tool for this special process, and I think you have to put in some time until you understand what's going on here. So because it's such a special process and I almost never need it, I don't want to explain it real in detail. Just so far, you tell the process how many bars you want your event to be or what measure your track is. And then you can work with different versions to get to a solution. You see, I already applied a change because right now I activated auto apply, and the tempo, the original tempo is 84.9998 beats per minute, and I now said I want it to be 86.7174 beats per minute, and that means I stretched it 100 to 98.01923. So it's just a slight change, and you can already see, even though it starts here at beat 1, it is slightly longer than 2 bars. And that is what this process does. You can tell him the length in samples. So my original is like this, but I want it to be this many samples long. I don't know how you would ever know that, but it is possible. Or the length in seconds, it was 5 point something before, and now I want it to be 3 something. And then it will automatically tell you, well, before it was around 85 and now it's around 134 beats per minute. Or you can put in a ratio. That would be interesting if you know some math. Then you can say, well, I had 100 beats per minute before and I want it to be 120 in the end. That means I have to calculate blah blah blah, and I don't know, I think it's something around 80 something, and then you will get the tempo change from 100 to 120 beats per minute. Well, 83.3. If you know your ratio, you just type it in here and the process will do that for you. I think the tool is not bad, but it looks a little confusing and you need some time to find your way through it, and I'm not sure, probably if you make sound design or you have some really special things you want to do, I have no idea who needs that. One thing is cool here, you can select the time stretch algorithm, and there is 3. The standard one, which is really standard. The Ampex one I think is slightly better, and Elastic Pro is supposed to be the best one. So the Elastic Efficient is less CPU heavy. The other ones need a lot of power from your computer. The one with formant also keeps the formant of your audio material. That means it's good for vocal, and the other one is just for normal instrument use. And there you have focus on time or focus on pitch, and do something like a tape recorder. So if you would time stretch with a tape recorder, it would give you a certain sound, and that is what the Elastic Pro tape does. So these are some solutions that you can use if you need time stretching in your project. I hope you find this helpful. If so, leave a comment or a thumbs up or watch some of the other videos. Take care.